Hello once again, it's Matthew here from Matthew North Music. Thank you for watching this channel, and as ever, if you like this sort of content, please hit the subscribe button down below because that really helps the channel to grow. And if you click the little bell icon, then you'll be notified every time there's a new video. And as ever, all of this stuff is completely free, so it doesn't cost you anything. I know there's some channels that have subscription tiers and stuff. I don't do anything of that. Everything's free. Anyway, today I thought I would do a quick little video about the new Roger Waters album because my last couple of videos relating to Pink Floyd were very well received, and I thought I may as well just give you an overview, if you like, of the new album, because I think it's released tomorrow and I've managed to, by special means, I have been able to hear it a little bit earlier. And my overall feeling of the album is it's very good indeed. It's different, it's completely different. And my first thought after listening to the album was, had Roger Waters not done this as an album and he'd done it as a live setting first in sort of like an MTV Unplugged kind of thing, which I think is kind of how the concert's going to be at the weekend, I think it would have been treated completely differently by the audience, because I think because of the fact that Roger announced it, so of course social media went completely nuts saying, oh, it's going to be terrible, it's going to be awful. Then there was that whole spat with Polly Sampson and David Gilmour. That kind of didn't help things either. And then kind of, you know, there's all been so much chitter chatter about what it's going to be, what it's going to be like, blah, blah, blah. And then Roger dropped a couple of songs in advance. I think he did Money, and then he did Breathe, I think, and did he S and the M as well? I can't remember. Anyway, he dropped a couple of songs. But of course, you're hearing them out of context of the whole piece, which is kind of what I thought. And listening to the whole album complete, you completely get what he's done from start to finish. And so I actually think it was not the best decision to let anything drop. I think Roger should have literally put the album out when it comes out and not given any teasers away, because I think it has detracted from the overall feel of the album. Now, as I said, I've listened to the album a couple of times now, and my overriding theme is it's a great record. Now, the sound of it is different to how you know the album. It's been stripped back. It's very much all in the style of Roger's Lockdown Sessions album. Up until the point of Us and Them, really, there's not a lot of cymbals on it. There's the odd cymbal here and there, but it's very much dry drums, no cymbals, like Peter Gabriel did on that famous album of his. And the album starts with Speak to Me, but Roger's quoting the lyrics of Free Fall, which is a song from Obscured by Clouds. Now, that song to me has always been like out on its own, really. It doesn't really fit anything that was on Obscured by Clouds, and it doesn't really fit Dark Side of the Moon, but it is almost like this is Dark Side of the Moon in 4 minutes, because lyrically and musically it has all the elements of Dark Side of the Moon. And I think this was to me kind of Roger's second standout song that came along for how the band would progress, with If off Atom Heart Mother being the first. And they very much set the tone of what would then come with Dark Side, Wish You Were Here, Animals, and The Wall, and more so even the final cut. In fact, you could almost say If and Free Fall could have almost been the prelude to the final cut, and all those other albums came in the middle. Some might agree, some might not. It's just an opinion. Anyway, so he quotes some lines from Free Fall, and then that goes into Breathe. And it's a lovely mellow version of Breathe, and you know, he's kind of done some swapsies in that some of the melodies that were played on keyboard instruments he's got played on acoustic nylon guitar, and then some of the guitar parts are then played on keyboards. And there's quite a lot of actual Hammond organ on it as well, which obviously I'm a big fan of that sound. So yeah, that fits really well. Then when we get to the On the Run section, Roger kind of does some more spoken word stuff. I'm not going to go into too much detail about what it's about, because I think you can probably guess, but I don't want to give away too many spoilers, because Another thing with this album, it's an album, but it also feels like an audio play at the same time, which is quite interesting because I've been listening to Godley and Cream's Consequences album quite a lot recently, and I think that certainly set me up in the mood to listen to this version of Dark Side. Time follows next, and it's a different setting. This whole album is a different setting. And I think with Time, it's this much more sort of mellow, keyboard-focused version. But we are starting to get some strings in it, and the strings become more prominent as the album goes on. And there are some very beautiful string sections on this album, and they kind of float in and out all the way through. And so Time is more of a sort of spoken vocal, really. But it sounds great, really sounds nice. And then you get the Great Gig in the Sky section. Now, of course, this is something a lot of people have been talking about. How can you replicate Claire Torry's vocal? Well, you don't. You do something completely different, and that's what Roger's done on this. He tells a story, and the story is actually very moving. And then we get the vocal line, and it sounds like a male vocal. I don't know who's doing it. And it sounds like it's gone through a vocoder of some description, so it's a lot lower. But it's a very beautiful piece. It sounds superb. And then at the end, you've got a Roger link, if you like, in the way Roger does it, straight into Money. And you all know Money because that got released, when was it? About a month ago, maybe. And, I really like that version of Money because it's different. And I think that's the thing as well. I know this album so well. I know Dark Side of the Moon so well. And I know I quite often quote the Stephen Wilson quote about Dark Side of the Moon, is that when you know an album that well and it's in your DNA so well, you never really feel you ever need to listen to it again. And I kind of feel that with Dark Side of the Moon and Wish You Were Here. And Animals, really. I know those albums so well. And even The Wall, but The Wall I only ever listen to the live version. I don't listen to the studio version because I find the live version far superior. That's the Is There Anybody Out There album. But I'm deviating slightly. But so we get to Money, then we get into Us and Them. Now again, Us and Them is another standout moment from this album. It's just fantastic. It really is, and it's as I said, it's really thought-provoking, really moving. There's some great strings on it, and yeah, it's brilliant. And then we get the rest of the album, and Any Colour You Like, again, that's got some more spoken word to it, and it's a completely different arrangement of the song again, but again and I think from Us and Them onwards, that's when we start to hear also more cymbals on the drums, and the drums are actually a lot more pronounced on side 2 than they are on side 1. And I think that just helps to sort of build the thing up. And then the conclusion, the Brain Damage Eclipse section, I would say is the section of the album that is most like the original. There's not a huge deviation. It's very recognisable, and I think Roger has just basically kind of left that bit alone, if you like, and he's just doing that fairly straight. I mean, it's obviously a different feel, but the kind of the arrangement and everything is fairly similar to the original. So anyway, I'm going to listen to it a lot more, and I'm sure there's going to be loads of reviews on this album coming out in the next few days. And I think this is one album that, this is my first kind of thoughts of it, really. But I think I will probably have different thoughts after I've listened to this for a couple of weeks, couple of months, or whatever, because I think it's one of these albums, on every listen, you will find something different. And I already learnt more things about it just on the second listen, particularly the bit on Great Gig in the Sky when Roger's telling this story. So I think it is an album that I think there's a lot of rather unfavourable comments been made about this record, and I think once people listen to it, those comments will kind of be forgotten, because it is a great piece of work, and I think it's superb. I mean, if you wanted to give a description in like a couple of lines, it is what Rogers has said in his interviews. He's basically doing Dark Side of the Moon in kind of the style of his lockdown sessions, but he's added to it, and he's with the spoken word, and it's not overtly political either. It's more philosophical than political, I would say. There's very little mention of anything to do with, war or governments and stuff like that. It's much more about life and death, because ultimately the album is about death, and it does have a very somber feel all the way through it. Though, I mean, the album always did, but the somberness, I think, has been amplified in this new version of the album. Anyway, that's my first thoughts about it. Anyone that's listened to it, why don't you leave a comment down below and see if you agree or not agree. We're not here to agree and disagree. We're here to discuss and chat. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please think about subscribing to the channel, and I'll catch you on the next one.